Hi, I'm Bethany with Shabby Fabrics, and this beautiful quilt you see behind me is Bespoke Stars. This is from The Quilted Life, and we have kit this for you in Plum Citrus Batiks by Anthropology Fabrics. Okay? The star of this quilt is the 60-degree diamond ruler, also by Krista Mosier from The Quilted Life. And I want to walk you through some key points in this to kind of take away some of the fear that we get with working with 60-degree angles. This quilt comes together really easily in no time, and the ruler just makes it really, really easy. So I want to show you some of the features of this. If we look at the ruler here, you can see I've got some lines running across. I've got some diamonds here. There's a lot going on, but if I lay down a black piece of fabric, you can see there's some white lines doing like a hexagon here or a bigger hexagon here. We're going to use a couple features on this. There's a lot more to this ruler that you can do with this ruler than what we're just doing here. There's a couple different projects that Shabby kits with this. But I'm excited to show you this one, so let's get right into it. I'm going to clear the table so I have a bit more room, and we'll walk you right through this project. All right, so we've got a few shapes to cut out, and the first one is going to be the spokes you see on our Bespoke Star Quilt. And we're going to use those white dash lines I just showed you. They're a little hard to see here on the fabric, but what we're first going to do is take our strip, and the instructions will be in the pattern. Krista's given us permission to kind of walk you through some key points of this, but we don't want to give away the whole pattern because we want to protect her rights here. So that pattern will be in your kit, but I'm going to show you here how to use the ruler. You can see I've got some dashed lines up here. We're going to line that up on our strip, and the white dash line will also line up here. We're going to cut on both sides of this and then turn the strip around and cut the other side. So this is going to be the whole length of the ruler. We're just going to line this up right on what we just previously cut. And then I want to make sure that those white lines are right between my fabric here. I'm not off a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to line that up. Make sure it's lined up here. And we're going to be making, quite a few of these. Oop, I just bumped that. And that's the main kind of component of this in the colored fabric that you see here. So we'll be making those. We have a couple of different shapes to cut out of the white fabric, and these go really, really fast. My favorite thing when I made this quilt was to cut out all of the fabric at once and had these big stacks of these triangles I'm going to show you, and it just looks so satisfying. So for this next cut, I like to put my strip at an angle here, and then remember the straight lines we had going across. We are going to use those at the 2.5 inch mark here and cut on either side to get these little 2.5 inch triangles. Okay. And then to get more of these, we're just going to rotate the strip, and we would rotate the ruler as well. That way we're never cutting like towards ourselves or under our arm. Okay. And then you may notice on these triangles that the point is cut off here, but on the other ones it's not. I've made a couple samples of this quilt where some of them I didn't cut the points off and some I did. I did prefer having all of the points trimmed. It kind of made lining up my fabric in later steps a little easier. So to do that, I would just take the ruler and rotate the fabric and line it up again and just nip that off. It's, a bit of kind of going the extra mile here, but I thought the end result really was worth it on this. So you can do that for all of your pieces to make them uniform like this. So our next shape we're going to be doing is the middle of the star here. So our little points we just cut are here, and then we have one big diamond in the middle. Okay. So we're going to be using the diamond lines that we have here, and this will be on the 4.5 inch mark. I'm going to gonna line this up. Okay. Now this one, I will cut here and here, and then again flip the fabric and the ruler. Okay. And then now I'm lining this 4.5 inch line up on the edge of the fabric. Make sure that's okay. And this one, I love that when I do this cut, that point is automatically trimmed off for me. I don't have to like rotate and do it again. So you're making these, and then I think there's 1 or 2 more shapes. Okay, our last shape is gonna be just like the first little triangle. It's just much bigger. Okay. And we'll be lining this up on the ruler, following the measurements in the pattern. And again, this first cut I like to put at an angle, so I can go 1, 2, and then rotate the fabric and keep going from there. And again, this is one where on these triangles I did cut off the little points to give everything that little blunt point that you see. Okay. All right, I know I said that the big triangle was our last shape, but I did forget that we have these secondary pieces that are on the edges. And this is from that same big strip. We take the ruler, and you can see these 2 like lines or 3 lines running down the middle. We're gonna take the leftmost one and line it up with the edge of the fabric, starting with a straight edge. And then the lines running through should line up right with that fabric. Okay, so that'll be a 6.5 there. And that'll go straight down. And then this is one I did not cut the point off of because I didn't have the right angle on my ruler. But this is another shape. And then another one that we have out of the colored fabric is that it'd be the same thing, just cut in half. So you would start with a straight edge here and do the exact same thing here. Okay, so the cutting's done. Let's get into actually piecing this. All right, so we're gonna start putting this all together. On my spokes, my triangles here, you can see those little points that we cut off nestle right into the fabric. Ooh, and this way I have to make sure I'm putting the print side down. Okay. And then I messed this up a lot where sometimes I switched these and did them here and here. I always just remembered it's going from the left up to the right, kind of in a diagonal. So that's how I remembered that, because a lot of times I would do this and then I unpiece this a lot more than I'm wanting to say. Grab that seam ripper. So I'll put these here, and then all your seam allowances are going to be 1/4 inch in this. And then for your little side pieces, we have that half spoke. Same thing here. It's going to be going up to the right. We'll be placing that as well. Okay, so really easy 1/4 inch seam, and I'll see you at the sewing machine. All right, so one thing I loved about this is that when I'm sewing my white to the like colored fabric here, I always just press the white like towards the white fabric. I didn't ever have to think about like, oh, does this seam go that way and this seam go that way? These just press out so beautifully. Okay. And if you see here, that just lines up beautifully there. Okay, so we're gonna make quite a few of these for our spokes. These will be our horizontal ones going across, and then for our diagonal ones, we're gonna be doing big triangle to the long edge on the spoke here. So make sure I'm doing right sides together. And exact same thing, just a 1/4 inch seam all the way across. Okay, so I wanted to point out here that those little notches that we cut out of the fabric, if we're sewing this right, we're going from the point of the notch to the point of the notch in here. That's our 1/4 inch. So that's one thing I really like. And then if you saw when I was sewing this, I've got that 1/4 inch seam guide from the Guideline Seam Setter, and that is such an awesome tool to help me like keep the accuracy on this. I just kind of butt my fabric up next to it and just sew, and I get that super crisp, accurate 1/4 inch every single time. So we've got some 3 shapes here. Got a couple more to go through that are just our edge ones. You're not gonna have a lot of those. This will be the bulk of your quilt, but I wanted to walk you through those too because they were a little confusing for me at first. So we're gonna take some of the horizontal spokes that we made here, turn this on its side, and we're gonna add that little half piece that we did earlier, and this will be going right here would be where that goes, okay? So this obviously will get cut off and straightened when we go to assemble the quilt together. And what I wanna do is if I can see here, like my fabric edge, feel that through the quilt there, that's where the edge of the fabric is gonna line up here. So that should go right to that, right along. And then that little tip will extend a 1/4 inch beyond the edge of the yellow fabric, okay? So far, really simple piecing. The ruler has done most of the work for us on getting this accuracy. One thing that did really help me was I sprayed all my fabrics with sizing before I started cutting into them and sewing into them, especially when we're working with seams that are on bias. I found this helped to stabilize things and give me just a little extra like insurance in this to just keep it together without it kind of distorting as I sew. So I do suggest that you don't trim this flush until the whole quilt is assembled. Okay, our last shape that we're gonna do, like I said, this one was this piece here. Our next one's gonna be this one here. There's only a few of these in the quilt, and it's very similar. Let's go in the opposite direction here. It'll be a big piece of fabric to one side, and then the little ones here and here. Sewn exactly the same. I did sew my 2 big sides first, and then sew this one on. And again, I'm not gonna trim this flush until I get the whole quilt assembled. So those will be all the patchwork pieces that you do. These are your components. And then we're gonna start laying this out and we'll piece this row by row. So I'm gonna clear this table a bit more so I can show you the bigger pieces here. All right, we're gonna start laying this out now. And this is my favorite part because the pieces are so big here that this quilt comes together so quickly. I'm only gonna be laying out a portion for you, obviously, since I don't have a big enough table to do, laying out the whole thing. But you're gonna be alternating your big diamond pieces and then your diagonal little skinny ones on the big rows. And then your skinnier rows, after you get your edges done, you'll be alternating the white diamonds and then your colored spokes here. And then these would be sewn together in rows. I'm gonna walk you through piecing some of them together so I can show you how easy it is to get these points to match up. But I wanted to lay this out first, and you can kind of see that coming together really fast here. So let's join these 2 together. Okay, I'm gonna clear a little bit of this to give me some room. Okay. But you saw these were like this. Okay, again, these little notches are coming into play where I'm gonna put the fabric right up to the notch, I'll pin this in place, and then that should put my fabric here that overlaps right at a 1/4 inch is where it should be overlapping. And I'll stabilize that with some more pins at that area. But I found that when I took the extra time to cut those little notches out of all of the angles, my accuracy really improved greatly on this. All right, time for the moment of truth to see if these lined up. And well, let's just check it first. Ooh, that is perfect. Okay, so I like to press these seams open. And then we'll just be continuing this row by row. You get your whole row completed, and then join that to the next one. And again, cutting out those little divots really, or the little points of the fabric really did help get that. So I'm gonna piece a little bit more and then show you joining the 2 rows together, okay? All right, so I've got some of my rows assembled here, and then I am just going to put these together. And this is where I really wanna take my time and do some pinning to get these really accurate. Obviously this first seam here, we're just gonna line up the raw edges. But as I go along, hopefully, you know, in a perfect world, I'm overlapping these, you know, my white fabric's overlapping by exactly 1/4 inch, and I can get these pinned perfectly in place. But I wanna kind of show you maybe like a little hack or a cheat code here. If you find that you get along and maybe your fabric is too far over or in one direction or the other, I want you to remember that a lot of these seams here are on bias, which usually can lead to, in some circumstances, like the fabric warping out of place and kind of distorting your project. But I kind of find it's almost helpful that I have a little bit of wiggle room to kind of just stretch the fabric just slightly if I need to, like you can see here, to get it where I need to go. So I like to say, like, you are the master of your fabric. You're gonna manipulate it in place. You're not gonna let it rule you. So just kind of take your time and pin along. Like here I can kind of see I'm a little bit more than 1/4 inch. And so I'm just gonna kind of slightly pull this so I can see it's exactly 1/4 inch overlap here and get this pinned in place. So this will just be row by row, and then I'm gonna get this sewn and we'll see what that final product looks like when it's all sewn together and pressed open. All right, so I am ironing this seam open for you, and then we're gonna flip it over to reveal these seams joined together. Okay. If you see here, that just comes together so beautifully. And I do have a seam here that runs across, but because this fabric is all the same, if these don't exactly match up, I think when you zoom out far enough from the quilt, you're not gonna be able to tell. So that's, you know, a point where you have a matching seam, but I don't think it's going to be critical to the aesthetic of the quilt. So that is going to be your Bespoke Stars quilt, pieced again row by row here. Comes together so fast. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. We do have kits available, limited quantities of this quilt behind me, and then in this same pattern, we do have a couple other collections kitted as well. So make sure you check those out on the website, and I'll see you on the next Shabby tutorial.